Anthony Albanese says Chinese President Xi Jinping did not raise the increasing pressure the US was placing on Australia and other allies to join a conflict over Taiwan. Let's bring in Strategic Forum CEO Dr. Ross Babbage now for more on this. Ross, thanks for joining me. How much is China looking to drive a wedge between Australia and the United States? And how much is the handsome boy from Australia playing into Beijing's hands?
Well, it's good to be with you. Look, I think Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party would love to push a great big wedge between Australia and the United States. I don't think that's going to happen. And I think Xi Jinping realises that. But I think he sees an opportunity for easing Australia or trying to persuade Australia to distance itself more, become less connected to the United States. And I think that's a lot of their strategy right now. And we'll probably see more of that sort of activity in the weeks and months ahead.
How closely do you think would the US be watching Anthony Albanese's extended trip to China, particularly at a time when, of course, it's seeking clarification on our position on Taiwan and wants us to lift defence spending?
Well, yes, I'm sure the Americans are looking very closely at everything that's the Prime Minister's saying and other members of Cabinet and, for that matter, other Australians and some of the debates that are taking place here. They're very concerned. I think they're very concerned on two or three key fronts. Firstly, they're really worried about the level of defence expenditure. They've been fairly direct, even publicly, about their perception that we need to lift our game. And I think they're not trying to exclude themselves from this. They realise they've got to lift their game as well, because the circumstances that we find ourselves in the Western Pacific are much, much more dangerous than they have ever been, really, since the Second World War. And because we're talking about a situation where the centre of global conflict and power is not on the other side of the world as it was during the Cold War. It's right just beyond our doorstep, just to our north. And if there were to be a major clash or crisis in East Asia, let's say over Taiwan, it's very likely if that developed into a major conflict, that we ourselves would be intimately involved. We would be attacked. A number of our facilities and other things would be affected very soon, and we need to be prepared for that. And the Americans realise that. And they realise that not just for our interests, although they're concerned about that, but for their own interests too, because they see Australia as playing a critical role in helping the United States conduct its own operations in the theatre.
Yeah, and look, no doubt about it. Let's discuss the reports in The Australian today that former Prime Minister and AUKUS skeptic Malcolm Turnbull discussed the PAC's problems with Pentagon Policy Chief Eldridge Colby. It says the pair are understood to have canvassed a range of topics about which Mr Turnbull has spoken in recent weeks, including the need for Australia to reclaim greater sovereignty and independence in world affairs by standing more firmly on its own 2 feet. Ross, I know that you are actually a colleague and you're a friend of Eldridge Colby. Do you think that Malcolm Turnbull's interventions are helpful right now?
Oh, look, I think Bridge Colby's a very professional and he understands Australia very well. In fact, he really likes Australia a lot. And in fact, he said that in his in the testimony he gave in his confirmation hearing in the US Senate. He made it very clear, in fact, that of all the allies the United States has, he regards Australia as the closest. And he has great affection for this place and for a lot of Australians. And so he likes talking to Australians. And I'm not at all surprised that we've had a former Prime Minister who, of course, championed the case for a French submarine to be bought by Australia and developed here. When that was overturned, I think there's a sense of real regret in his mind, perhaps even a degree of a grudge almost against Scott Morrison for leading the charge in developing the AUKUS plan. So, look, I think it's Bridge Colby can understand the dynamics that are happening here. He has been immersed in East Asian security planning and thinking for a long time. And I know how, we've been tic-tacking with each other for many years and reading each other's material. He will just put this in the right context, and he would see this conversation with Malcolm Turnbull, or set of conversations, as really just being part of a bigger mosaic. And he talks to a lot of Australians, and that's as it should be.
Yeah, look, fair enough. It'll be interesting, though, to see what happens from here on in. There's a lot at stake. Dr. Ross Babbage, thank you very much for your time this evening. Really appreciate it.